haven't seen my baby. I almost died last night. I was lucky on that hospital bed, the theater room. They saved my life, but I was meant to die. Hey mama, welcome back to the Whole Mama Show. I'm your host, Aisha O'Reilly, and we're revealing the untold stories of motherhood. I can't believe that we are at the season finale of this season. It has been so enlightening and so cathartic speaking to every single guest of mine. And so as always, as with every season, this is going to be my episode. It's been almost a year since I gave birth to my last child, Amaya. And since then until now, I haven't shared this story publicly. It's been quite an emotional roller coaster for me. I've gone through many challenges and I'm still dealing with the aftermath of my traumatic birth. So in order for me to tell my story, I've asked my good friend Olerato to join me to play host of this episode. And so she can also offer me some support. Many of you know her from her YouTube channel, Olerato and Family, where she shares her vlogs of her family life with her cute kids. She was one of the first people I told about what happened to me. Every year, more than 280,000 women die from childbirth and pregnancy complications. Most of them are in sub-Saharan Africa, and I was almost one of them. This is my story. Hey, friend. Thank you so much for helping me with this.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm excited to get into it with you.
Yeah. It's been a long time coming, but I'm ready. I'm ready to share the story.
It's time.
Yeah, it's time.
You haven't shared this, so...
No. I mean, in private, not in public.
Publicly.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into it then.
Let's get into it.
So tell me, how was your pregnancy? How would you say, was it different from the boy's pregnancy or?
It was quite similar in a lot of ways. In other ways, it was different. And one of the ways that it was different was like, I definitely felt more sick. Like more morning sickness. Yeah. And every one of my friends I was telling, like, I am so heavy, I'm so exhausted. And I was in more pain, I would say, than the first two. And so, I just kind of chalked that up to age.
Yeah.
And like, this is my third baby. So
third pregnancy. And
yeah.
Your body has done it 3 times over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so even when I said it, like, I would point it out to my doctor. This is like 6 years after your first pregnancy. Of course, you're going to feel a little bit more like heavy and a bit more, like I just persevered.
Yeah.
Because I knew that, like, okay, there's an ending.
There's a means to an end.
Means to an end. That's
bridge.
It. Yeah. So that's how it was in general. There's a bit of a saying that when you're pregnant with a girl, like you kind of look uglier.
Yes.
So I definitely felt that way. My husband said that's not the case, but I definitely felt less cute.
Yeah. But tell me the delivery, how was that?
Okay, so everything was going normal. This was going to be my third Caesar. So I wasn't feeling too stressed about it. I went into labor.
Oh.
Yeah. And this is the third time I'm going into labor. So with Kai and Kenzo, I went into labor before the scheduled Caesar. Okay. And then this time with Amaya as well. So I don't know, my body is just sort of like...
You have eager babies.
They're so
people.
Basically.
Yeah.
She's coming. Thankfully, we had given the kids over to the grandparents. Everything was going normal. I called my doctor. He's like, cool, I'm on my way to the hospital. I'll meet you there. So with all of the deliveries, I had messaged my mom. I'll let her know, or Kev would let the family know in the family group. But this time I messaged her directly and I was just like, okay, I'm in labor on the way to hospital. And for the first time, I asked her to pray for me. I said, please pray for me. And, my mom, whenever I have asked her before, not like during pregnancy or delivery, but anytime, she just says, always. And always. I always pray for you. So I'm like, okay. I just needed to have that. It was like almost something in me.
That reassurance that somebody is looking out for you, not just alone in this.
Yeah. So we got to the hospital, and as per normal, this is a hospital that I've been having my babies, you know, same doctor, same hospital.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's the same anesthesiologist. Everything was fine.
Yeah, just routine as usual.
Routine. Yeah, everything was fine. Everyone was relaxed. Everything was like cool, you know? And so they, you know, wheeled us into theater. The Caesar started. And yeah, everything was fine. And she came out and, you know, did the cry and everything. And I think, you know, they put her in my arms very, very briefly before they took her away to clean up.
Yeah.
You know, while they were cleaning her up, you know, that's when obviously like my doctor's like starting to sort of, you know, put everything back together and all of that. And Kev was over on that side. And I just remember as he was bringing her to me so I could breastfeed her. And my doctor, he has a very dry sense of humor. He's a very like chilled guy, but I saw that he had this look on his face. And then as Kev was coming back around with Amaya, that's when, you know, my doctor like looked at me and then he stopped Kev from giving Amaya to me. So that's when he said, listen, you're bleeding a lot. He was telling Kev just to wait. And I was like, okay. And
What's going through your mind at this time?
I know it's serious.
Yeah.
I know it's serious. I knew it was serious when I saw his face. And what's going through my mind at that point was like, he's got this though.
Yeah.
At that point, I wasn't panicking. I wasn't like, he just told me like, okay, this is what we need to do. I need to find the source of the bleeding because I'm not sure where or what's happening. Yeah, and don't know where it's coming from. So at that point, I was still like, okay, you know, not ideal, but because obviously I was awake. And this is the thing when I was telling this story back to a couple of my friends who haven't given birth via C-section, a lot of them were like shocked. They're like, you were awake when this was happening? I said, yes. It was, you know, a normal routine Caesar. It wasn't an emergency Caesar or anything like that.
And you didn't have a high risk pregnancy?
No, I didn't, you know. So I was awake. I was very awake. I was lucid. Obviously, I was drugged up with the epidural and stuff. But otherwise, I was very much present. You know, I could feel the tugging and all of that. And obviously, I wasn't like in pain, but I could feel the pressure. And the pressure and the tugging was starting to get like hurried. You know, I could feel that there was like the movement was like urgent. You know, so I could feel that, and I could hear my doctor saying, I don't know where it's coming from. Like talking to the nurse, you know, I don't know where it's coming from. We need to find it. We need to find it. So he was obviously talking about the bleeding. At this point, I don't remember Kev being in the room. I'm not sure when he was escorted out, but I don't remember seeing him at all.
Gone with the baby.
Yeah. I don't remember seeing him, hearing Amaya. I just remember the doctor. I just remember the nurse as well as the anesthesiologist. What happened next was he stopped. And he looked at me and he said, Aisha, I'm going to have to remove some of your womb. That's when I knew, okay, this is serious.
This is serious, yeah.
This is serious now. So he said, your womb, every time I'm stitching it up, it keeps bleeding. So I'm going to have to remove a part of it to stop the bleeding. So I said, do what you need to do.
Did you know, like, were you conscious enough to know what that meant?
In a way,
Okay.
yeah. In a way I did, because that's what I was saying, like, I knew it was serious. I knew he wasn't going to do that just for the fun of it, or just because, like, okay, it's easier that way. And also his tone, you know, he was very serious. He was very, like, you know, straightforward, but like, listen to me. And I'm like, I'm here, I'm listening. And so they carried on, and I could hear him talking to the anesthesiologist, like, I don't know what's going on here. I've never seen this before. So both of them are like, are those her ovaries? They said, yeah, these are her ovaries. So basically my ovaries had enlarged.
Yeah.
Like about 10 times their natural size. What he told me afterwards was that a normal average ovary is, you know, anywhere between 4 to 8 grams, I think it is. My one was 92 grams.
It was
like
huge.
Yeah, it was pretty much 10 times the size. And then the other one was over 100 grams. So they had enlarged that much. It looked like my ovaries were overproducing a certain hormone, and it made them like really, really large. Yeah. At that point, that's when he said, I'm going to have to remove everything. The bleeding is like out of control now. I have to remove everything. Again, I said, doctor, do what you need to do. And so obviously I'm on the table and I can't do anything.
Yeah.
other than pray. I just prayed. And I just like, all I remember is just praying and begging God to let me see my babies again.
Yeah. Because you hadn't even officially met baby Amaya.
I hadn't even
You saw her
really, it was like for like 20 seconds.
Yeah.
At that point, I was thinking about Kai and about Kenzo and obviously Amaya, and I didn't know where Kev was at that point, because obviously they're not telling me, okay, we've asked your husband to leave there was no
formal,
there was no time. There was no time. They were literally trying to save my life.
Yeah.
I just begged God, like, it cannot happen here.
Yeah.
It cannot happen this
Not
way.
that moment.
Not now.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to just go home. I just wanted to just see my babies again. And so that's what I did. I prayed.
Yeah.
I had this weird sense of calm over me.
Yeah.
I didn't panic, but I was very aware of what was happening and what could happen.
Yeah.
I calmed myself somehow. And I just let it go to God. Yeah. I was like, this is it now. Like, there's nothing more I can do at this point. Then I remember the anesthesiologist coming to on the side of my head. And he asked me a really random question. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
And I started answering him. And then that was it. I blacked out.
And you blacked out.
Yeah. So he obviously had given me some more anesthesia. So then I blacked out. And I wake up.
Yeah.
I'm still on the theater bed.
Yeah.
And I could just see my doctor walking away, throwing away his gloves in the bin. And I remember thinking, am I dead? I'm alive. And it didn't feel like I had been under for as long as I had.
Yeah. I was about to say, how long was it then?
In my head.
From, passing out to waking up.
In my head, it was like 15 minutes. I was cold. I was, obviously very like sort of like, in and out of things.
A little. Yeah.
A bit disoriented. And then I was also like, the best way I can describe it is like when you watch shows like Grey's Anatomy, for example, or like another whatever movie, and something hectic has happened, like a bomb's gone off and someone's waking up, and it's like, like you kind of see things from their perspective, and it goes dark, and then it goes
light,
blurry and light, and then dark. That was literally what I was going through. I'd like open my eyes and I'd look around, and I'd sort of see people, and I'd see nurses or whatever, and then I'd close my eyes, and then I'd wake up again, and I'm in a different, like, sort of like I'm being wheeled somewhere. So I remember bits and bobs.
Yeah.
But what I do remember is the pain, like, so they basically wheeled me to ICU. So that's where I was. And I always remember there was a nurse, this male nurse, who was standing at the foot of my bed the whole night with me. And he told me, I'm here to monitor you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not leaving your side.
They had to monitor
They had to monitor me. And I kept telling them, I'm in so much pain. Please, can you give me something? Please, can you give me something? And so they gave me as much as they could, but then they reached their limit. And that's what they told me. They're like, ma'am, we've given you
everything we have,
as much as we can. If we give you anything else, it's going to send you into shock or whatever. I can't remember what it was. But basically, they couldn't give me any more pain meds.
Wow.
It was at the maximum. That I was in
so
much
pain.
So much pain.
Wow.
I ended up sleeping. I woke up the next day, and that's where I saw that I was in this like sort of big ward in a way. Like, it was like a circular. So that's ICU. It was like 10, 15 beds all in like a circle. The nurses stationed in the middle. So I was very like, okay, I made it.
Yeah.
I made it.
Yeah.
This is real. This is real.
This is real life.
Yeah. And so they came and they chatted to me. Like, a couple of the nurses said, your doctor's going to come see you soon and let you know what happened and all of that. And, I asked obviously about Amaya.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we think that she's downstairs. Or they said something about Kev taking her or something like that. They're like, don't worry about her though. She's fine.
Baby Amaya is fine.
She's fine. So I just kept going in and out of sleep, basically.
And this is now what, the day after the surgery?
The day after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The day after, the morning after, basically. So then Kev finally came, because, I didn't have any of my stuff. Like, I didn't have my phone. I didn't have anything. And you're not allowed.
Prepared for that.
No.
Yeah.
You're not allowed it anyways in ICU. I knew what had happened. I knew. I was just in the moment of, like, gratitude. Like, it didn't go down that route.
Yeah.
And so then Kev came and we had a conversation, and he was like very sort of like quite quiet. you know, like almost from what I remember, only sort of saying what he needed to say. And I asked him about Amaya, and he was like, she's so beautiful, and she's got the softest cheeks, and that's crazy. Like she's perfect, you know, and she's downstairs and she's good, and the nurses are taking good care of her. I was like, okay, great. You know, it was sort of like, okay, you know, and he was kind of a bit sort of, do you know what happened?
Yeah.
You know, like, do you remember anything? And for me, I was like, yeah, I know I was bleeding, and, you know, and then, you know, the doctor was like, you know, he fixed me up or whatever. He was just like, I almost lost you yesterday.
Yeah.
And I always remember that, like, moment, like, looking at him, like, I know.
Yeah.
And I knew, but it almost didn't really hit me, I don't think, as much.
Because you were still in this gratitude bubble to say, I'm here.
I'm here.
Now.
And I kept telling him, babe, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here. It's okay. I'm here. You didn't lose me. I'm okay. I'm here. And I said something about 15 minutes. He's like, babe, you were gone for 3 hours.
Wow.
You were in surgery for like 3 hours. I was waiting like outside. They asked me to go outside. So it's almost like when me and him talk, it's like two different stories.
Two different versions of what happened.
So it's like, oh, okay. And then things started sort of like hitting me. Like, I think I asked my doctor when he finally came to see me if he had removed everything. He said, everything's gone. I had to remove your ovaries. I had to remove your womb. So you have just the top of your cervix left. I left that intact, but everything else is gone.
And how did that make you feel?
I don't know. I can't remember how I felt when I first heard it. It was just okay. Again, I was just still in this like, I'm alive.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Not
alive.
really processing
everything.
That's, like that. I'm grateful I'm here, guys.
At that point, I just wanted to see Amaya and I wanted to breastfeed her. That was something that I was really longing for because, you know, I'm such a like advocate for breastfeeding and I breastfed both of the boys within the first half hour and, you know, all of that stuff. So I was really like, can I feed my baby now? When do I see her? I wasn't allowed to eat because, you know, my stomach obviously like still had to settle. So I was only allowed a liquid diet. So my milk was struggling to come in as well. And I told the nurses as well, I'm like, I need a breast pump. I need something to express
get the milk to start the production.
To start everything going. My experience after I had Amaya was horrible. Like in ICU. It was almost like I was treated like the least important patient there. I was told often that, you know, there are other people here who, you know, someone's in a coma, someone's in whatever. And for me, I was like, but I almost died, guys. Like, and I was busy getting a blood transfusion because the doctor told me I lost almost 2 liters of blood.
Wow, that's a lot.
So I was getting a blood transfusion. You know, I haven't seen my baby. No one else is allowed to see me except Kev. And poor Kev was also dealing with our, some builders at the house, our kids also, you know, like making sure that Amaya was okay. So it was really like, I felt very lonely. No one was telling me when I could see Amaya. How long do I need to be on this liquid diet? So I started getting really, really angry. You know,
like they were dismissing your feelings just because you happened to be there because you were giving birth.
Yeah, I do. Completely. Like, we've got bigger problems.
Yeah.
Then like, this, you hang tight.
Yeah.
You're fine.
You were just giving birth. It's okay.
It's no big deal.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. Even like the breast pump thing, I really had to fight for that. I really had to fight for it to the point where when Kev came to see me again that day, I told him, please, can you get my breast pump from home? Because these guys are not giving me a breast pump.
Yeah.
It was such a mission. I could also see, like, you know, just in terms of like, the nurses weren't, you know, greeting and seeing how I'm doing or anything like that. It was just
a bare minimum. Not even asking for like, you know, the celebrity treatment.
No. Just, hey, I'm a human being. I just went through a really traumatic time. My uterus has been removed. Can I get some kind of... It was like nothing. Later that day, Kev came to see me and I was so emotional. I don't know if it was that day or the next day. And I was just like bawling. You know, I'm there and I can't move and I can't see Amaya and no one's paying attention to me. And, you know, like no one's explaining, you know, the process of things or whatever. So I just felt very much like,
you've been placed in a corner and
that's it.
Everybody's just living.
Yeah. Well, not living, but like they'll get to me eventually. I just had to wait my turn. And mind you, I'm not in a public hospital. I'm in a private hospital. I think either way, no one should be treated that way.
Yeah.
Like no one.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether you're private or public.
Yeah.
But obviously, you think going into a private hospital, you have certain bedside manners from the hospital staff. And I just didn't get that. So there were one or two nurses who I end up like chatting to, and they were really, really nice. But, you know, they weren't dedicated to me. I had one nurse dedicated to me, but it was her first day. So she was still learning the ropes.
First day as in like
It was
first day at work.
her first day at this job.
Wow.
So she's also trying to figure things out. And so she sees that I'm crying with Kev, you know? And she actually asked me this later. She's like, Sissy, why were you crying so much? You know, what did I do? And she made it about herself. And I was just like, it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
I haven't seen my baby. I almost died last night. Like, I'm hungry. Like, there was, like, everything was just coming out. She's like, okay.
And no one is telling me anything.
No one is talking to me. No one is saying anything. I'm not in a coma. You know, I'm in here. People are not
You
communicating.
see everything, but you not being told nothing.
Nothing. So finally, she brought in another nurse who had been there for a while. And she said, how can we get her to see her baby? So they made a plan. They spoke to the maternity ward. They asked the doctor and staff in the evening, because, you know, the ICU doctor does his rounds like 2 or 3 times. So when he came, and they asked him, he's like, yes, of course. Why hasn't she seen her baby? Take her now. Take her to see her baby. So finally, they wheeled me downstairs because I still wasn't walking like yet. So they wheeled me downstairs, and I was finally able to see her. It was a bit of a surreal moment because she also looked so different to
I was
other
about to say,
babies.
were you not worried you wouldn't be able to recognize?
not necessarily recognize her, but it was just sort of, it felt odd that the first time that I could really hold her was I was in a wheelchair and I still had my IV, and, you know, I had like tubes in me, you know, but she was so quiet.
Yeah.
Between the time I gave birth to her and then the first time I saw her, I couldn't remember her face. I couldn't remember how she looked like. He had shown me a photo when he saw me, but now seeing her in person and I see her cheeks, and I was like,
How long did they let you just be there with
I fed her. I finally was able to breastfeed her. So it just felt like a really moment. Like I was really like,
I've waited for this for
it
many
felt
hours.
a really long time. Yeah. It felt like a really long time. I did have to go back up to like get some more meds or something like that. So thankfully she did feed, you know, the little bit of milk that I had.
Yeah.
Mind you, I still had my catheter in as well, you know. So all of those things are just
Still hooked onto you.
dangling and, you know. And then, I went back upstairs and, you know, rested. And so the next day I had to get another blood transfusion. So I spent 2 nights in ICU. And so that second day I was discharged to go now into maternity
ward.
Yeah. So I was so relieved. I was so like, okay.
Yeah.
Because that chapter of the nightmare was over, because I hated being there. I hated the staff, everything about it. I was able to finally eat.
The isolation of it all.
It was isolation.
Yeah.
It was really isolation, you know. So then I finally was in maternity ward, but that didn't go that much better either.
Okay. What happened there?
So I was in a semi-private ward. So it was like 2 other rooms, sorry. So there was another patient there who was cool, quiet and stuff. I think she left like the next day. So I spent 3 days in maternity. And so that next day, I think it was, you know how it is like after you've given birth and everything that's happened, I just wanted to just sleep. I just wanted to rest. I'm still high on meds and all of that.
Yeah.
And so I gave Amaya to the like nursing staff, and they were a little bit like, you know, we're not actually supposed to take the baby because you're supposed to be with the baby. And I'm like, but I need to rest, you know, because I said the nursery's open. This isn't COVID like
Times. Yeah.
COVID times.
Yeah.
Where like with Kenzo, I couldn't even leave him in the nursery. But this time I was like, but what's the problem? And they're like, no, you're supposed to stay with your baby. We're not supposed to take them overnight anymore. So I felt that it was weird. But then the nurse was like, but I'll take her for tonight, but tomorrow you're going to have to take her. So I was like, okay, thanks. So at least I was able to like sleep that maybe a few hours.
There was no logical explanation why.
They only told me right at the end.
Oh.
Right at the end.
Okay.
So they took her and whatever. But then that second night, a new patient came in. So thankfully, Amaya was actually a pretty good newborn baby. She slept for a few hours, but just as I was putting her to sleep, a new patient comes in. She's in, her and her husband and her parents are like talking and They switched on the light.
No.
So I'm pissed. What is this now, guys?
It's in the night.
It's middle of the night. I think it was like 1:00 in the morning or something.
No.
So I gave them some time to maybe like settle down. But Amaya wakes up. So now I have to like settle her again. So I told them, like, excuse me, because it's all closed, right? So I can only, I didn't get up to go, but I just said out loud, excuse me, hello, there's another patient in here and I'm trying to sleep. And, I remember the mother saying, oh, I'm so sorry. And then they started like whispering instead. I could still hear them.
Yeah.
But at least it was a little bit better.
Yeah.
But the problem was the staff. The staff kept, banging the door open, in and out, coming in, checking this, checking that. So then I called the staff. I'm like, listen, I'm trying to sleep, guys. I'm trying to rest. They're like, yeah, but she was an emergency patient or whatever. Just give us like another like 15, 20 minutes. It was like, but this isn't like 3:00 in the afternoon. This is like in the middle of the night, guys, So that really, really angered me. It woke Amaya up, and now they're claiming they can't take her because she's all of this stuff. At that point, because my milk wasn't coming in, like it wasn't fully in yet, they had to give her formula, right? Okay. I kept saying, I can feed her. And this is the only way that my milk is going to come.
Yeah.
And they're like, if she's hungry, you can let us know, then we can bring her some formula. Basically, it was just a mess that second night. The next day, Kev came to see me and I was bawling. I was so angry. I was so frustrated. I told him, I'm ready to go home. And he was like, look, let's just wait until the doctor sees you and make sure. I'm like, the doctor's already seen me. He said I'm good to go home. It's probably best for me to go home. I want to go home. He was like, listen, the thing is at the house, it's still very dusty and there's just a couple of things. Yeah, like just give it another day. And I was like, no, I did not want to stay here one more night. They're useless. They are not listening to me. They're not letting me sleep. I haven't slept, so I've just complained like really. And again, this is a shared ward, so the other patient can hear what I'm saying. But at that point, I really don't care because I was just like,
They also didn't care.
They also didn't care.
Why should you be the bigger person?
Right?
They didn't consider you. What happened? Did you end up going home that night or did you have to stay another night?
My doctor was happy for me to go home, but Kev had begged for me to stay one more night so he can make sure that the house was ready, make sure that it was going to be comfortable for both me and Amaya. I think deep down he was also like still a bit rattled by everything that happened, and I think he just wanted me to be comfortable, so the house just wasn't at that level, at least not at the level that he wanted it to be for me to be home.
So how was that night?
It was the worst one.
The worst out of all?
Wow.
Okay.
It was the worst one because this time I was like, Amaya wasn't sleeping. She was crying and I was exhausted. Obviously, I was also still in pain, so I kept having to get up and pick her up from I was starting to fall asleep with her on. Yeah, and you know how dangerous that is. And I'm still on like meds,
basically,
drugs. So it was just a horrible night. The nurse, like, she was horrible. She came in and she just like gave me a bottle to feed her because she's probably hungry. Like, there was no sense of like,
not like, let me settle her.
Let me help you. Like, I didn't feel I had that support at all. It was so bad that I ended up like almost calling Kev to come and get me from the hospital at like 3 in the morning.
Wow.
Because I was just so exhausted. I was so like, no one is helping me with this child. And I was in pain. So the pain meant that they kept giving me pain meds. I could still feel everything. And so then I called them and then they finally came. Like, one of the nurses came and she was so sort of like, what is it kind of thing.
Why are you calling me at this hour?
So I told her, can you please, I begged her to take Amaya. And she's like, we're not allowed. It's against our policy and stuff. And I'm like furious. And so I start crying. When I'm frustrated, I cry. And I was so frustrated, and I felt so like alone. And I'm begging this woman to help me. She's a nurse and she's not helping me. And she starts saying, because I told her that I'm in so much pain. And she's like, you're probably feeling like contractions because, after you have a baby, your womb starts contracting. And I just burst out to her. I was just like, I don't have a womb. They took it from me. And I just like I was in hysterics at that point. And that's when I think she just sort of like stopped, and she was like, oh. And it just felt like looking back on it, whenever I think about that moment, I always wonder, like, how did she not know what had happened to me?
Did they not read the file?
Did they not read my file? Yeah. It was the same nurses who were taking care of Amaya while I was in ICU. Why wasn't I in ICU? So I think that was like kind of the first moment that it really dawned on me, like, I have no womb. I have no womb anymore. Because these pains are coming from somewhere else. It is not the normal...
not the contraction.
It's not. Exactly,
It's
because it's gone. And I'm just weeping on my bed. And she came to me, and her demeanor changed, and she was like trying to comfort me. But at that point, I had had enough anyway.
Done with it. Yeah.
I really didn't want her to even touch me, because I was just like, she finally took Amaya, and I conked out. And so the next day, the matron, I don't know if it's like the head nurse.
Yeah.
She was really nice, but she's not on shift at night.
Yeah.
So I told her about what happened. And she apologized, and she said that, that wasn't how it was supposed to be. Yes, it's a policy of ours because we're trying to get mothers to breastfeed their babies. And we find that if they're in the nursery, it's a whole, they don't really feed them and all of that. And it's some kind of mandate that they have according to the WHO. And I was like, you're not helping mothers by doing that. You're not. This is the only time that we can actually rest.
And recover.
You
just had major surgery.
And then, because we're going to go home, and the majority of us don't have help.
Yeah.
When we go home, so you're doing mothers a massive disservice here. So I was really angry, and I was angry for myself, but I was also angry for, I don't know if it's one of those things that I take it on me, like, it frustrates me, the lack of support and lack of sort of care that we as women get even before, during, and after we give birth.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's really just stayed with me all this time that I'm like, I gave birth to all of my kids in a private hospital here. We paid money for that.
Yeah, yeah.
And the service was still...
And they still treated
me like I was like...
did this before, you
no
show
big
up,
deal.
Give birth, and you go home.
Yeah. No big deal.
And if you want anything more than that, who do you think you are? We don't do that.
Yeah.
And they don't try to understand. It's actually shocking because yours was a whole different case.
Exactly.
As well. You didn't just give birth.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the C-section.
Yeah. Like looking back on it, that was the first trigger for me when she mentioned my womb that didn't exist anymore. It almost felt very primal when I corrected her. I don't have a womb. They took it from me. And that's always stayed in my head until now, because it really does. Still to this day, it's like it's a year later, it still feels like something has been taken from me. Going home was very emotional. I was so relieved to leave the hospital. I was like, I never want to step foot in there again.
Yeah, yeah.
And as soon as I got inside the house, I just wept. And Kev was like, are you okay?
Crying.
Yeah, like
we're home.
And I was like, I just never thought I was gonna see this place again. And I was just so happy to see our dogs.
Yeah.
And happy to see, those little things in your house that you're like, we need to fix that.
Yeah.
We need to do. And I was just so
all
happy
the annoying things.
The things that hurt you.
I'm so excited for you to annoy me.
Exactly. Like for me, I'm like, but this is home. And so I was just, again, that like feeling of gratitude came over me, and I held on to that for a really long time. So every time I was like feeding Amaya and bathing her when I was able to bath her, and all of that, like I got an extra helper for those like sort of like first couple of weeks afterwards, because I don't have family here,
and
they couldn't come to help. So I needed people.
Extra pair of hands.
Yeah. And so the recovery itself was much longer than my other two.
Would you say it was potentially because of the womb being removed?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think
Because there wasn't a whole other layer of surgery.
Yeah, I think it added to it for sure. I think it was a mix of that, as well as obviously I'm older, third pregnancy and all of that.
Yeah.
So it was almost like Kai took maybe about a week or so for me to feel a little bit, I'm not like wincing in pain. Kenzo, it was like 3 weeks. With Amaya, it was like 4 or 5 weeks. Yeah. So it was much longer.
And the pain meds, did they give you
the
same ones?
They gave me the same ones for longer. I really just wanted to just put it all behind me and be like, okay, we're done having babies. I wanted to just leave it at that. Like, okay, that chapter is closed. What happened. I'm alive. She's okay.
Yeah.
Let me just live my life. So that's what I wanted to do. And that was the plan.
Yeah. Did it go according to plan?
No,
Okay.
I didn't.
What happened?
It was almost like I didn't have time to process. That's the best way I could describe it. There's still Amaya, and then the boys came back from their grandparents. Yeah. There's life. So for the longest time, I was trying to stay in this postpartum bubble, but, my other duties as a mom to a 2-year-old and the 6-year-old, they were still there. They didn't know what happened to mommies. I also tried to give myself a bit more grace because, I'd done this twice before, and now there's also this extra layer and things. But I just started feeling like I'm just not able to handle everything. What started happening was I was not sleeping. I wasn't sleeping. So Amaya actually was a good sleeper. So she'd sleep. So people would be like, oh, wow, your baby's sleeping. Like people like family, So, wow, your baby's sleeping. That's amazing. You must be so rested. I'm like, I'm not.
Yeah.
So I would have these horrible nightmares. What they were about, I don't know. Just weird things, scary things happening. And I'd wake up and then I'd struggle to sleep, or I'd be too scared to sleep again because I'd have another nightmare. And so this started happening like almost every day. So Amaya would be down for 6-7 hours. I would be awake for maybe 3 of those hours. Wow. So now I'm sleep deprived, not because my baby's not sleeping, but because I'm going through something. And at that point, I didn't know what it was. The physical aspect of postpartum as well were hitting me. So I just had a lot going on at the same time.
So what did you do? How did you move from I'm not sleeping, the baby sleeping, to at least I'm getting some sort of sleep? Did you seek any help?
Yeah, I had to, so as you know, after I had Kai, I suffered from postpartum depression. So part of my recovery for that was therapy. So I have a therapist, and every once in a while, since my postpartum depression days to basically to now, every time I start feeling like my mental health isn't in a really good place, I'd call him up and set up some appointments. So when I started going through, I'm not sleeping. And then the other thing that was going on as well is I started to not be present in our life. I would have moments where I'm with the kids and everything's fine. No one's having a tantrum, no one's whatevering, but I would just all of a sudden my brain, my mind would just go into this really, really dark place, really horrible place. And I start thinking about horrible things happening to us, horrible things happening to my kids, horrible things happening to me, horrible things happening to someone I love. And so then it almost became like an obsession. I would just switch off and I would go to this
dark place.
It's like a rabbit hole. Then I started getting panicked, whenever my mom would call, I would see missed calls from my mom, and I straight away think something's happened. Someone in my family is going to die. Someone I love is going to die. So I started almost obsessing over death. This one time I was driving and the car just stopped. Thankfully, I was at a traffic light, so I put my hazards on and all of that, but I panicked. I started panicking, called Kev, and everything was sorted out. But I got back home, I had a session with my therapist scheduled for that day, luckily. And when I started speaking to him, I just burst out crying. And I just let everything out. And he's like, okay, take me through this. What's happening?
What's going on?
What's going on in your head? And I'm telling him, I'm like, I feel like I'm going to die. I wake up in the mornings. I wake up in the middle of the night in a sweat. I wake up in the mornings. Someone calls me. Maybe my sister's trying to call me just to say hi, maybe. But automatically my mind is going to, I'm going to be told that someone I love is dead, or I'm going to die, you know? So I told him I almost died today. And he's like, what happened? And I'm explaining this, you know, and it turns out it was just our clutch. Our clutch wore out or whatever, and it just needed to be replaced. So Kev was telling me, it's okay, May. But for me, I was like, I could have died. And it was like, no, but you weren't in a situation where you could have died.
But deadly situation.
Yeah. But for me, I believed it. I believed that was what's going to happen to me. And so the best way I was able to describe it to my therapist was like, you know, like the movie Final Destination, where death is obviously the villain, and it misses you, but it'll come back for you. I was convinced that was going to happen to me, that I was lucky on that hospital bed, the theater room. They saved my life, but I was meant to die.
Beyond a clock,
Yeah. So it was like death is just going to fulfill its, like, you know.
Of course. It's
right.
Coming.
Yeah. It's coming from me. That's when my therapist, and he's very professional and stuff, but then I could see his face was just so sad for me. And he's like, Aisha, it sounds like you have PTSD. We need to get you like proper help, like not just the normal sessions. We need to actually have like trauma counseling for you, because like, even though you don't realize it yet, what happened to you was very traumatic.
Yeah.
Don't let anybody tell you that it wasn't. I don't know. It was some sort of weird sense of relief.
Yeah.
Because I could feel like, okay, this is actually something. I'm not going crazy.
You're not going crazy. This is normal. It's part of the process.
Right.
Yeah, of processing the emotions. But did you feel like people were not understanding you? You know, were you going through all of this, going into these deep, dark corners? Did you feel like, you know, people were dismissing you to say, no, but, you know?
Yeah, I do. It was good intentions, I know. So I definitely felt like the lack of a better word, the gaslighting of what happened to me started in the hospital. I know people don't mean to, but some of the comments that I heard, like the first one that I heard that was very like, sort of like, do you not understand what just happened to me, was, you know, the pediatrician on call who delivered Amaya. She's like, I'm really sorry about what happened, and you know, how you feeling and all of that. So I was telling her, and she was just like, well, you know, look on the bright side, at least you don't have to have a period anymore. And it was like, yeah,
we're not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, it literally happened like the day or two before. Yeah. So I'm not on that like, oh yay, I don't have a womb. I'm not gonna have a period anymore.
What she's saying is true, but we're not there.
I'm not there yet. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm not thinking of that, you know. I got that a couple of times from like one or two friends, the close family that I did tell. It was also like, at least you've had your kids, you know, you've had your kids now, and they're beautiful and they're healthy. And again, even now as I'm saying it to you, I know there was no harm meant with that statement. It was trying to comfort me.
Yeah.
But I think obviously being in the state that I was, it was just sort of like, it just felt wrong to hear. Yeah.
I don't feel that way.
Don't feel too bad. At least you had your kids.
Yeah.
So it just felt weird, you know? And since then, with some of the friends that I hadn't told yet, for example, you know, and I said, yeah, it was actually quite a difficult, but oh no, but Amaya's fine and she's healthy. I'm like, yeah, but I wasn't fine.
Yes.
I wasn't.
I think we tend to do that as people. We forget the mother. Yeah. It's the baby.
Yeah.
You know? The baby Amaya is happy, gorgeous, beautiful.
Yeah. Healthy.
You're complaining about it. Yeah.
So I wasn't fine for a while. My therapist put together like, you know, a sort of plan in a way, you know, to get me better and to make sure that my mental state was a bit more sort of normal.
Yeah.
And that I wouldn't like be convinced that death was after me, because that was me basically every day. And it's like, can you imagine how exhausted your brain and your body is, because every day you're waking up thinking you're gonna die, and that's not
always
the way to live.
Survival mode.
Always on survival mode, exactly, and that's not a way to live. Because he's a therapist, he couldn't prescribe medication for me. So he told me to just go to any of my doctors and explain what's been happening and see what they say. So I went to my OBGYN. It was about 3 months afterwards, 3 or 4 months. And, you know, I started describing it and he was just nodding his head. He's like, so I didn't tell him what the therapist said.
Yeah.
But he's like, Aisha, you have PTSD. This is classic PTSD. I'm actually kind of surprised that you hadn't come to me earlier. How have you
Been coping
with this? And I told him and stuff, he says like, no, let's help you, and it's very normal. And he was also just saying like, you've literally been through hell and back.
True.
And he's like, you are going through postpartum menopause. You're going through like things that normally in a woman's life happen at like different stages. And you're looking after a new baby. And now it's all happening at the same time. Yeah, of course, you're going to be a bit messed up.
Yeah.
So he prescribed me some antidepressants. That's when I started taking also some estrogen, because obviously my body was not producing estrogen anymore. That was also affecting my mental health. And he told me as long as I need that support and that help, and also the therapy part as well. He was like, yes, definitely continue speaking to your therapist, and, so that the meds and the therapy can work together. It's been a very lonely year in the sense of only like my immediate family and my closest friends know what happened when I had my therapy sessions ended the end of last year. And it was also a bit of a, worrying moment for me, because I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna cope. But the antidepressants have actually been amazing.
Yeah.
They've been amazing. I was really reluctant at first to like start taking them, because they don't really have a good rep. I felt better almost the next day, and it just felt like there was just this like tension that was lifted from my mind, from my body. And look, I don't want to like go out there and be like, everyone should be on antidepressants. No, but a lot of people, including Kev, were worried that, what if I become a bit more like a bit zombie-ish?
Oh, yeah. That's the rep for antidepressants.
Right.
That's what we hear.
Exactly. Like you're not yourself. You're like a shell of a person. But as you've known me, like I remember when I told you as well, it was like, you didn't even realize that you never would have noticed. But for me, I just feel a bit more like myself now. The best way, one of my friends was asking, because she also suffers from anxiety. She's like, how does it work? Does it make you feel? And I told her, the best way I could describe is like, naturally, at my natural state, I'm an anxious person. And my brain, my mind thinks of thoughts at like, they come so fast. And I don't focus or think about one single thing. It's like multiple things at once. And then I start getting worried about this and worried about that. And what if? And so now I kind of feel like the antidepressants just slow it down. Instead of like having a floodgate of thoughts, it's like just a little itty bitty backdoor gate.
Finish processing it.
Yeah. It's much slower. It's not like a highway of thoughts. It's like, a suburban road of thoughts.
That's like that.
Yeah. And so I can manage it more. Whereas before I felt so like consumed by my anxiety, and but now I'm like, okay, Aisha, it's okay. Let me figure this out. There are still times that I have my moments.
Yeah.
But otherwise you're
more level-headed now.
Much more level-headed.
You can actually process things.
Yeah.
Say, wait, is this really like...
Yeah. Do I really need to stress about this?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that.
Yeah.
Thing is, it's mostly like the aftermath of it all. I'm still going through menopause. I'm 37 years old and I'm going through menopause, and it's not menopause that gradually started through. It's
right there.
So abrupt, And so all of the things that I didn't know about menopause, now I'm going through them. I'm just like, wait, hang on a minute. I haven't prepared for this. So there's so many things that happen to your body after your womb stops working, your ovaries stop working, or whatever you want to call it, or like now, in my case, an emergency hysterectomy. It's never ending. I mean, I'm going to go back to my doctor, my OBGYN sometime this week, because something else has popped up, and I'm like,
people don't share these stories.
Yeah.
And also at the same time, understandably so, because me as Olerato on the opposite end, I have no idea what it's like for you. I just very quickly go to, let's look on the bright side.
Yeah.
I never have to spend money on a tampon ever again.
Yeah.
And you then stuck with, but that's not entirely the reaction I was hoping for, and then people don't talk about this.
Yeah.
But, you're opening up, and hopefully it'll give people, the platform to say, me too, at least I'm not alone.
I hope so. For me, as always, it's just the part about birth and delivery and how dangerous it is has kind of escaped society. I feel like a lot of people have forgotten that not just back in the day, still today, women are dying from childbirth. And it's not as often, but it still happens. I think I'll always have it with me that, like, there are other women who didn't make it. And even if, like, I don't know them, I feel like I have this, I already feel very compassionate and very empathetic towards my fellow moms. But I think especially for the ones who didn't make it. And the ones who didn't end up seeing their babies. Yeah. I think about them, you know. Like, obviously still in a way that I'm like, what if I was one of them? But and I think that's where the cycle starts again, because I'm like, oh, I'm so grateful I'm not. It's the reality for a lot of families out there that a lot of fathers are raising babies without mothers, you know. And it's so painful to know, and it's even more painful because I feel like they're not acknowledged.
Yes.
They're not acknowledged because we don't talk about it. I never want to scare women. I don't want to scare people with the realities of stuff. It's more like just for us to be aware. And as mothers ourselves, but also as a larger society, men need to be aware, you know, employers need to be aware, you know. So don't make jokes about when a woman comes back from maternity leave about her vacation. How was your vacation? You don't know if she had a traumatic birth.
Exactly.
You have no idea. You know,
you don't even know if the baby made it.
You don't even know if the baby made it. You know? So I know that it's like one of those things that I can't change the world or whatever, but I'm just kind of hoping that we can have more of these conversations so that people can be a little bit more compassionate and just to be a bit more thoughtful about some of the things that they say and how they talk to mothers and treat mothers. You know, it's not a walk in the park. You don't pop a baby and then just start walking around as if it's normal. Some people do, and that's great. And others, like myself and the women who have passed, it's not the case. I stayed offline for like 4 months because I felt like if I came back on and pretended like nothing happened, I wouldn't be my authentic self with my audience. You know, I mean, my whole brand is about honest motherhood. And here I am coming on and having experienced birth trauma, almost dying. And I didn't want to just come on and be like, hey, you know, like everything's hunky-dory, here's baby.
Yeah.
But I knew that I had to tell my story at some point. And so this is where I wanted to share it, you know.
So it's been, what, almost a year now?
Yeah.
How's life looking like right now? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling so much better.
Yeah.
I am.
Why share your story now?
I wanted to be honest. You know, like I was saying, like my entire mission in this podcast, in, you know, my social media content, in just who I am and who I've become as a person, is to have honest conversations about motherhood. Yeah, and I always say this, it's beautiful and it's fun and it's sentimental, but it's also really scary.
Yeah.
And it's also very overwhelming, and it's also painful, and it's also all of those things. It felt inauthentic of me to not share this part of my story, of my journey in motherhood, because that's the truth of it. You know, that is what happened. Yes, I have this beautiful, amazing, gorgeous little girl, Amaya. You know, she's the light of our lives. And at the same time, giving birth to her, it didn't have a happy ending in terms of like, or could have not had a happy ending. That's what I mean. So that's all true. And I think it's mostly, as I always do, just to let another mom know, you know, that she's not alone in this. That someone else, myself, for example, I've gone through it. I'm going through it as well. I'm still going through the after effects of it. So it's an ongoing process and journey, and she's not alone in that. So that's really why I wanted to share it. And I just felt like a year later, I'm ready to actually share it now. There was also, I'm not going to lie, there was also a little sense of like, I don't know if shame is the right word, because rationally, I know there's nothing for me to be ashamed about. You know, this happened to me. I wasn't the cause of it, but how I understand my womanhood has been taken from me. There's something it feels a bit like,
your identity is not.
Yeah, I feel a bit naked. You know, I feel a bit exposed in a way. I also, for the longest time, felt really guilty. I felt really guilty that I didn't spend the first days of Amaya's life with her. I felt really guilty that at that moment that I realized that this is a life or death situation, I was at peace. So for the longest time, I questioned myself. I'm like, did I want to die? Is that why I was at peace? And so that really tortured me. And I spoke to my therapist about it. And he was just like, Aisha, can you imagine if you did panic? Like actually panicked? If you did the opposite of what you did? Do you think you would have made your doctor's life easier? Like his job easier? Would you have made his job easier? And I was like, I don't think so. He's like, you did exactly what you needed to do to
have them save your life.
Fight for your life. Because I said, I thought I was going to fight for my life. He's like, but you did. That's what you had to do to do that. And so I needed those kinds of like conversations with my therapist just to affirm and validate, like, look, no one has a specific way of reacting to this. You know, and so I'm hoping that if someone's listening or watching this right now, that they also understand that it's going to be a roller coaster. You need all the support you can get, all of the empathetic people you can have around you. And again, just know that you're not alone in it. Yeah.
I thank you, Hannah. In closing.
Thank you.